Occupy, you guys. What do you think of it? What have you, I'm curious, like, what you, I mean, obviously it's so new, it's hard to say anything close to definitive, but are you excited by it, bummed out by it? What role do you see artists playing in it?
I'm really inspired by it. I think, like, so I think the other kind of big idea that's kind of brewing now is this notion that Rebecca just laid out with intersection, which is that it's about creating the space. It's about creating the creative ecosystem wherein all of these really kinds of interesting collaborations can occur and all these sparks can kind of happen and things can kind of move from there, and they're self-organizing, and then they somehow become viral, and then they ripple out, and they have these huge effects. And I think that that's the thing that Occupy America got right, or is getting right. It could all go wrong right now. You know what I mean? In the next couple of hours, it could all go wrong. But I think that that's one of the things that they've gotten right is to allow the space to be open, to be creative. In the old days, when you organized movements, it was all about, like, we're all going to get behind this one message, and people would sit and debate for days, hours, days. There's probably some veterans in here who know exactly what I'm talking about, what that line was going to be, and then you all march behind that banner. And what I think is really interesting and amazing and artistic about this particular process is the openness to it. Politically, I'm not an anarchist, but I think artistically, I am. And I think that that's like the really interesting possibility that comes out of all these different types of models that are coming together right now. So.
I'm personally thrilled, obviously, to see all of the digital tools and social media that's been being used for the various movements in the cities. It's very similar to the work that we've been doing in the hackathons, where you can create almost anything in 48 hours. You've got designers, you've got artists, you've got technologists all collaborating around this one movement. And it's really awesome to see how quickly and virally it moves.
For me, it was, I grew up in the generation where they were sort of always asking, like, how come this generation doesn't, like, I guess I feel like I was in the generation that, like, the 60s, they did all this stuff, and your generation is doing nothing. And just like, sorry, they fired about the Gulf War. I don't know, it was just like, there was just not something that we were, and there were certainly demonstrations against that, but it was just, this to me feels like that thing that I've read about, that where there's things happening, and I don't think the 60s had a real clear message either, but I certainly feel like the world is a better place because of it. And a lot of art came out of it sort of spontaneously, not because people were assigned to create things, but because they sort of were in the movement and inspired by it, and sort of out of that came all this great art that that's classic rock and roll and a lot of music, classic music, R&B came out of that movement in the 60s, just because you were sort of by osmosis you pick it up or you go in and grab it. So for me, it's like I feel like as much as I can, I would like I'm going to New York on Friday. Me and Laughter Against the Machine are going to New York on Friday just to spend a day down there, just to sort of see what happens. Just to see how it affects us, because to me that's there's the sort of the want to sort of, not even to go down there. There's been talk of performing, but for me it's like that could be it, but it's not really about that. It's about like being in it and just sort of being in it as a person, not necessarily going down there, because I feel like I'm here now. Let me tell you what there's a part, but I just sort of feel like I just want to be in it and see what's going on.
Yeah, it seems like it could be potential fodder for so much stuff. Every day I see more and more. I mean, a lot of it's happening online, though. I think it's another interesting kind of dichotomy between, like, online action and offline action, like Occupy asks for both, or uses both, and, it's like occupydesign.com, like occupyartist.com, I think that, there's a lot of energy around it. It makes me think, like what kinds of art come out of a desire for social change, or like maybe who are some artists working today that you guys feel particularly excited about, or kind of responding or part of that?
I mean, I think there are a lot of artists that do work that straddles, you know, multiple arenas. Fabiana Rodriguez is an artist that immediately comes to mind. You know, she founded Tues Design, which is a design firm working exclusively actually on social justice movements and issues, and she's sort of the go-to person for almost any campaign. We'll always have her designs there. It's iconic. You can really recognize it at this point.
She actually co-founded Culture Strike with us.
Okay.
So
you know, but I mean, I think that you know, a lot of the artwork it's a response to what's going on, and so in turn that can inspire more people to become involved. And so I think that back and forth, it's a conversation. I don't think that anybody creates the artwork in a vacuum or creates the artwork just so that it can be, you know, the poster for a campaign or something. But it's a conversation. It's a conversation, and the artwork is just one more tool in that conversation, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thinking about how art can also leave a record of social change. That's another one of its functions. And I mean, again, it's really too soon to say anything about Occupy, but like, what do you feel like, you know, like if somebody was looking, you know, at the last decade, you know, what do you think the art that's being made today would say about us and our kind of, in terms of our social worlds?
It probably depends on what art you're looking at.
Right,
I mean,
right.
there's always crap art. And I don't mean, I just, you know, there's like, I think about, you know, I think about music, like I think that like, you know, there's always going to be music that is not worth discussing.
Well, I think that even the crap art though is like, it exists and people can draw conclusions about it, you know. I mean, again, like I'm actually thinking about what you were saying, like, you know, growing up in the shadow of the 60s, like, you know, I went to a college and I was dying to protest, you know, like I would have protested like the floor, you know, like created a sticker campaign around it, like, because we didn't have Twitter, we had stickers. So I feel like Occupy presents like this opportunity, but like, even Occupy aside, you know, like, I don't know, I mean, I think Josette, like the kind of work, the kind of artists you guys are fostering, you know, they're using data in really interesting ways. And that seems kind of new.
Yeah, so data ends up being, I mean, it's obviously just factual information. However, when you kind of visualize it and tie it together, it comments on our society and what's happening, and creates sort of patterns out of a spreadsheet or something like this. So, I mean, Aaron Coughlin is doing amazing work in this field. He works for the Google Creative Lab and has also been doing, I don't know if you're familiar with flight patterns that sort of in 2005 tracked FAA data across the US. So, I mean, data, there's 15 petabytes of data being created every day. And so it's really interesting to see how digital artists are reacting to that amount of data. It's such a, I mean, it's like, it's hard, it's such a new movement, it's like hard to sort of describe what, especially like Occupy and digital art and all these sorts of things, it's like hard to put words around what it actually is going to do in the future.
What I think is interesting about that though is you know, data, there's been all this talk about the privacy issues that Facebook or Google raises and that kind of thing. And it's because we live in a world in which data has advanced to the point where Amazon knows me better than my kids do, maybe. You know what I mean? Hi, Jeffrey. Like, here are the books that you want. Here are the pieces of music that you want this week. And so it's interesting to see how artists can actually take that space back. What we're thinking of doing this spring, actually, at Stanford through the Institute for Diversity in the Arts is something that we'll call Occupy Art. I just bought occupyart.net today. So if anybody wants to buy it from me, I'll listen to bids. But the idea is to, on the one hand, see how artists have responded to occupations. So the occupation of the borderlands right now, in the US, for instance. And then on the other hand, to talk about how artists then occupy space to be able to transform it. So to be able to, you know, go in and use data and then transform the usages of that so that people are actually, you know, liberated in some sort of a way. So I think that that's, you know, that's sort of where we're at this particular point, is kind of taking what we've got out there and sort of, you know, tilting it on its side, trying to give people a different way of looking at things. And I think that that's maybe the cool insight that Occupy has given us. The Tea Party just wants to take us back. So the Tea Party wants to use old images to put us into sort of an imagined past, this nostalgic, you know, sort of, you know, Betty Draper type of household, right? That never was. And so I think that, and then on the other hand, you know, right in front of us we see all this stuff saying this is the world as it is. You know, you don't have any control over it. We will satisfy your every need. If you let us, Wally style, I'm referring to all these crazy. All right. So what's interesting now is to be able to take the culture and shift it on its side and say, you know, no, look at it a little bit differently. Maybe there's new possibilities that pop out when we turn the box sideways. So.
And I think specifically with the Occupy movement also that it was sort of interesting is that when it started, it was sort of called a failure. Like there weren't, like not that many people showed up at Occupy Wall Street according to the reports. It was sort of called an immediate failure. And I feel like social media is what said, it's like people became invested in not letting it be a failure. And I think that that's the thing that's about right now that they didn't have in the 60s is that people can actually see something and figure out how can my talents fit this and make this into something and to help sort of support this movement. And I feel like the thing that I think is great coming out of Occupy is that, like you said, Occupy design and Occupy here, your talents can fit in here somewhere. And I think a lot of times the artists we're not as organized as the people who know how to who know how to organize. And so for me, it becomes this really, it was like sort of like, thank God there's people who were like, I'm trying to prepare a space for you so you can do what you do, because if we wait for you to do it, you're not going to do it. And so I feel like, thank you, and like Haya Swanheiser, who's here, like was working on creating a space down at Occupy SF for the artists to perform, because she knows the artists will go down there and look around and not do the thing necessarily. You know? So I feel like that's what's great about this is that it's leaving. There's place for everybody's talents to fit in to support this amoeba.
Yeah, there's like a baseline thing to work. There's a little bit of structure at